The Karate Kid franchise is at the same time the worst and the best advert for martial arts. Join me as I review pretty much the entire franchise and series. Hi, my name's Drew and welcome to another review video on Flying Vina. Today I'm talking about the Karate Kid franchise, or the Miyagi-verse as it's actually known. The writers of Cobra Kai call it that anyway. So just to be very specific, I am talking about Karate Kid 1 and 2, and then the first three series of Cobra Kai, the TV show that was first on YouTube and is now on Netflix. So we have to start with the classic, of course, Karate Kid 1, which came out, well, what is it, 35 years ago or something like that. You've got a great film and story. You have Ralph Macchio and Noriyuki Pat Morita as a rather odd couple, I'll say, but the way their relationship develops is really great, and it shows you that you don't need a lot of flashy scenes with a lot happening in them to tell a great story. They share some really great moments with each other, and it gives you really great insight into their characters. It is, however, a rather one-sided story, as the villains, the Cobra Kai dojo, they don't really have much to themselves. They're just really bullies and they have no redeeming qualities whatsoever, so that, by today's standards, is a bit lackluster. Also, the film is probably one of the most epic endings ever, with the jumping kick that wins Daniela Russo the tournament. And at the same time, it's also one of the most abrupt endings ever, because you don't have even a full minute, I believe, after the kick is done, and then just it suddenly cuts to black and the film's over. It's overall a really great film. Rewatching it, I was pleasantly surprised. It really holds up and it's a great experience. Karate Kid 2, I feel, is quite a mixed bag. It has really great elements in it, and I love that they go to Japan, which, while it seems like a very obvious choice for a sequel, I do think it was executed rather well. Instead of a big city, we have this rather quiet fishing village, and I feel that it fits very well with Karate Kid's more philosophical approach to martial arts. Story, however, feels pretty forced at times, and it seems like they're ticking boxes. A bit formulaic it turns into. It's like they checked what happened in the first film and felt the need to repeat this. Something that constantly happens, I don't know why. I last mentioned that the same thing in the Christmas Chronicles video. I know it's not Christmas anymore, but if you're interested in seeing that review, you can click up here. Back to Karate Kid. Where I feel it's particularly weird is you have this Japanese fishing village and they're all talking English instead of Japanese. And so a small fishing village in Japan, I don't feel, especially because this was in the 80s as well, that they would actually have that many English speakers in it. What makes it even worse, I feel, is that they have a lot of Asian American actors in this film that you even see to this day, and yet they're talking English here, and again, they're Asian American, but they are actually putting on a fake bad English accent to talk in, and that is just so weird. It makes me feel quite happy about what we have nowadays, because nowadays they would just put it in Japanese and have subtitles and have us watch it that way, which is a lot better. It shows you how far we've come, so it feels so out of place hearing Mr. Miyagi talk to his long lost love, I'll call it, in English instead of Japanese, you know, when all they've ever talked with each other in their life was Japanese, of course. I have not seen Karate Kid 3, unfortunately it wasn't available on Netflix. They only had 1 and 2, and as I gather, it is a rather bad film, and seeing as my opinion matches the public's on number 1 and 2, which is 1 is very good and 2 is kind of mixed, I feel that it would probably be the same for number 3, so I don't think I've missed a lot by not seeing it. While the remake is on Netflix, I decided not to watch it, first of all because I feel the first one is already a great film and there was absolutely no need to remake it. It still holds up to this day, while it is still very much set in the 80s. It just feels like a very pointless thing. And also the blurb I read on Netflix is really off-putting, because while it has Jackie Chan in it, and as you know I'm a really great fan of his, if you want to know more about that you could watch my review on New Police Story, which you can see by clicking the link up here. But what put me really off is the blurb mentions that Jackie Chan's character, I don't even know if he is actually supposed to be Mr. Miyagi or not, he teaches Jaden Smith's character Kung Fu, which just seems really silly. The film's called Karate Kid and he's teaching Kung Fu. If it were a Taekwondo film, I would also be quite upset, you know, if my martial art is just being exchanged with another when that is such a central thing to it. It just feels really, really strange to make that choice, and I don't know if it's good or not, but I decided I don't really want to watch it just because of these things. But do let me know in the comments down below if I'm being too prejudiced here and if it is actually worthwhile seeing. So we'll move now to Cobra Kai, which, just as a reminder, the first 3 series that are available worldwide on Netflix now were all made by YouTube. Series 4 is where Netflix starts and took the reins, and we'll see what they will make of the show. I'll go through the show series by series. So starting with series 1, of course, does a really great job. We return to this world, this Miyagi-verse, 30 years later, basically, and it does a really good job of setting everything up and allowing us to get reacquainted with Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence, the 2 main characters, the adversaries from the very first Karate Kid film, and just get to know their worlds again. It hits a lot of right notes with a great heap of nostalgia, particularly when it comes to the music, as they do use quite a lot of 80s music, but it usually fits quite well. They also use the score from the original films, which is rather hit and miss at times because it doesn't always fit the moment or the location that we are in. But generally I like that they reuse that. If you don't know what it's about and are wondering how we return to this world, it's at least at the very start, it's a lot about Johnny. So he is actually the villain from the first film, who Daniel beats in the tournament in the final. And so he is trying to find a new path in life, and he decides to reopen the Cobra Kai dojo on his own. Meanwhile, Daniel LaRusso, the Karate Kid, has a highly successful car dealership and family, but it's quite obvious from the start that he hasn't been practicing karate in quite some time. As you can imagine, because it's not a big city, the 2 of them, they keep bumping into each other, which reignites the old rivalry. And as you can imagine, particularly Daniel reacts very harshly to the reopening of the hated Cobra Kai dojo. While it is not a complete black and white story like the very first Karate Kid, I feel that Johnny and Cobra Kai still feel very much like the bad guys here in the first series, particularly when Johnny's students are being taught that they should have no mercy, and that should be their general attitude, and they're constantly the aggressors in every situation. So it still feels very much like the first film in that way. Don't worry though, while I am talking about the whole series, etc., there are not going to be big spoilers here for the story, so I'm giving you a review without spoiling any of that for you. As interesting as the main focus of the story, and actually the 2 old guys, I'll call them, well yes, of course they appear a lot, they are not the focus, but rather their kids and the kids they go to school with. They are actually the main focus of the story, I would say. And it's a great idea from a storytelling perspective because they have their typical social groups at school, etc., of course, and these existing groups are challenged actually when this martial arts world sort of gets involved and intertwined with all that. It just changes their social structure, which is interesting to watch. In summary, the first series sets up the show, the locations and the people very well. You get to know them quite a bit, and I feel it is particularly a good job when you consider that it's only 10 episodes per series, and those episodes themselves are only 30 minutes long or less, so they achieve quite a lot in a very short amount of time. Second series of Cobra Kai, it aims to mix up this a bit more, so the lines blur quite a lot as we proceed with the story. It's no longer as clear black and white as the first series was, which I feel is a very good thing. Daniel LaRusso in particular, he shows that he has quite a temper and he's not always the good guy that he sort of proclaims to be or acts as. What is new in Series 2 is that the Miyagi-Do dojo is resurrected, and now you officially have 2 karate dojos, sort of, I'll call it, battling it out in town, and they show different approaches to the martial arts. So that is particularly interesting, of course, to mix it up. What I do want to complain about with Series 2, however, is that it feels very repetitive at times in terms of each episode's plot, really, which usually revolves around some event happening, whatever it may be in school or outside school. You have an event happening, most often it's just a simple innocent thing, and then in some way the two groups, so the Miyagi-Do and the Cobra Kai, they clash. And while of course it's very interesting to watch the fights and the stories are entertaining, the characters are still great, it just feels a tad formulaic because it really happens in pretty much episodes just like that. It does, however, end on a really great cliffhanger, which made me really question how they are going to continue in Series 3. The third series then tries to mix everything up yet again as we deal with the fallout from the second series, the finale of that, which again I'm not going to spoil for you, so don't worry about that. This series, so Series 3, feels a bit like the odd one out, I feel. Many things happen here that just feel a bit off. With characters going on arcs that don't quite make sense to me, and at times it feels like it's only made just to change it up for that particular character, and that is it. That's the only purpose. And really great callbacks to the films here, so you're really rewarded if you're a fan of the Miyagi-verse and the old films, so there's a great deal of fan service is fulfilled here. So the lines between the two senseis are sort of getting even more blurry here, but in this series again it moves back to Cobra Kai and its students really being the bad guys here, outright villains, which I feel is a bit of a shame. What I particularly don't like is just how ludicrous all the fighting gets. You have these high school kids and they're constantly beating the crap out of each other. You've got elbows and faces and hardly any blood, injuries, etc. There's not much going on here. Obviously it's all done for a high entertainment value, but still it is so over the top. You've got all these people fighting endlessly. What I also don't like is the permanent aggression that they all have throughout this third series. It's really, really weird. I feel it's just way over the top. I feel the writing felt a bit off this time around, and one thing that I thought was particularly strange is, I mean, yes, while I'm watching a lot of films and series and trying to be a bit more analytical about it all, it is still a very, very strange thing for me to predict all sorts of twists and turns coming in TV shows and films. I'm usually quite an oblivious guy, and it feels very strange to me to be so prescient about many things. I called quite a lot of developments that were happening in the stories and things that characters were about to do, and that was a bit disappointing for me. Besides that, many of these plot points felt a bit forced, and just to bring some tension to the characters and to create situations that don't feel entirely organic from a story development perspective. Especially because some of these characters here, they do things that feel that go against their very character and attitude that they've shown up to that point in the series. That, I must say, I really didn't like, because you had fundamental things being done here that don't seem very comprehensible when you look at some of these characters and how they've acted up to this point. Now don't get me wrong, I still thoroughly enjoy Cobra Kai, particularly for all the young acting talent involved, and generally speaking the characters I like. One thing that is very, very funny are Johnny Shenanigans. I would say out of all the characters he is probably the most entertaining. He feels a bit like a man out of time. He's stuck in the 80s really with his whole persona and attitude, tastes, etc. And it's really funny, particularly when he mentions things about modern times. He has a lot of comments that you can easily miss because they're just dropped in conversation. No one really reacts to them. But if you pay attention to them, there's a lot of humour that is sort of snuck into all sorts of dialogue. I do, however, hope overall that they are able to improve with the next series again. So take it a step up again. So we'll see what Netflix does now with Series 4. So overall, one thing I do have to say about Cobra Kai is, while even back then Karate Kid got a lot of people into martial arts, and this may do the same thing, I feel at the same time it's a horrible, horrible advert for martial arts too. And this is not because the fighting is in any way bad. I've mentioned this in other videos before. You can't just force actors to be good martial artists, that's quite silly. So I completely appreciate that they are not always bodily able to perform all sorts of kicks and jumps, etc., and get great action. They actually do a really good job in this series to sort of you use some magic by good editing and camera work, angles, etc. And they do a good job to hide and camouflage this lack of skill. So that is actually quite fine. No, my gripe is more with the general attitude of particularly the senseis, because in my opinion it's not reflective of any martial art that I know. Johnny is quite obvious when you talk about this, when it comes to this question, because particularly at the start he's got this sort of bully attitude, of course, although I have to say that this shifts and turns over the course of the series, which is obviously a great character development. That is done rather well. But also Daniel, who seems like he's the good guy because he was taught by Mr. Miyagi and has all these philosophical aspects to his approach. Daniel does a lot of things that I find are highly questionable, and he's got a big temper. His actions often are rather hypocritical, actually. It's not very becoming to use a martial art as an advert for yourself. He uses it for his car dealership, for instance. They chop the competition in half and all sorts of things. That is not very becoming. You should not use that to advertise yourself. As a martial artist, you aim to conduct yourself in every situation that life throws at you with a certain set of morals and a code. So you have things like courtesy, honour, of course, and various other tenets that you try to use in every moment of your life and apply it to every situation, even when it's difficult and even when it seems impossible. That is the goal, but basically this show would make you think that's a great thing to just go out and beat up your adversaries at every chance that you get, and it just seems so wrong. And the show, of course, also makes you think that you can learn all these skills in such a really short time. That is actually something that I find really quite funny. I mean, the kids in these dojos, they all have white belts. At least you don't see any grading, and they don't have any change of belt colour, etc. And they're going around beating up everyone, and they're winning all these fights and with all these skills. And it's quite funny because, at least I can tell you from my experience, if you're a white belt with no other prior experience, in most cases you are going to lose a fight. Not that a black belt guarantees you success, of course it does not, but still this is quite funny to watch actually, because like I say again, if you are a lay person, you watch this and you think you go to martial arts class for a month or two and you're an expert fighter, which does not usually happen. Yes, of course this is fiction and I'm reading a lot into this, but as a martial artist myself, obviously I have a very strong opinion on this, so I hope for your understanding. I just wanted to mention it just to give an overall picture. So I do feel that they could do a better job at, I get that they need to put tension in the series, etc., and the story, but I do hope that they will make a better job of portraying martial arts, because I don't feel this show in particular gives it a really good name. We are about fighting, but only when it is actual self-defense, or if it's in a tournament environment, when it's a sporting thing that we do. But no, I don't generally walk around punching up people all day. I have in fact never done that. It has great acting, in particular from the teenagers, but also the adults. So overall, you've got a really great thing going on here. The atmosphere is great, and the high school setting is something I really like. It makes me a bit nostalgic for teenage years and hanging out with your friends and all these things. Again, it's got short episode lengths, and also the series themselves are rather short, kept to 10 episodes. I feel this is a show that you can watch very easily. It's not a huge load of your time that you need to get into it. Like I say, they use the time in the episodes very well to develop everything. And I'll be honest, I am just a sucker for story continuations 30 years on, if they're done in a good way, like it is here. That's something I really also like. I think it's just great. 30 years on, you see these characters again, and when they do it as well as they do here, where they show what's happened to them and if they're still like they were, or if they've changed and how they've changed, I really like that kind of story. Very organic and very believable, actually. Okay, so I tried my best to keep this as short as possible. Those are my thoughts on Karate Kid 1 and 2, as well as the first 3 series of Cobra Kai. I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a comment down below if you've seen any of these, what you thought. Again, if you want to tell me about Karate Kid 3, there was even a fourth one I think with Hilary Swank, which also I don't really have an opinion on, I haven't seen it. And but I believe is also not really a good film. Tell me otherwise in the comments. Tell me about the remake, if you've seen that, what that's like. If you're looking forward to the 4th series of Cobra Kai, we can talk about that as well. Although I would ask you to try and keep rather spoiler free in the comments if you do add something. I'll thank you for watching this review on Flying Vina. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Share it around, I would appreciate that a lot. Subscribe to the channel for more videos and I will see you in the next one. Take care, bye.